we did not have a local optional homestead exemption. And so that's the portion of the revenue that I guess you could say they're assuming we're contributing towards funding of education. So the amount that, if the state incentivized the full 20%, it would be about the same amount that we're losing on the maintenance and operations side. It would not impact the interest and sinking side, but it would be that 63 million, give or take, that we might receive back if they incentivized at the full 20%. So have I answered your question?
Yes, you have. I always like to ask and have the question answered, how big is big and how small is small? $60 million is big.
Yeah, it's big.
Even half of it is a big number. So I have interrupted voting on item 3F. The motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It passes unanimously, Holly. 3K, the board will consider making a determination that good cause did not exist as required by law for Samantha Amin, Bruno Baltazar, Amanda Chapin, Nicole Kerfman, Julie Ho, Herlinda Kennedy, Helen Kwan, Jennifer Linder, Madison Newhouse, Megan Puckett, Evelyn Sidland, and Danielle Wall to resign their respective employment contracts. This item was in fact discussed in closed session pursuant to 551.074. There are no speakers on this topic this evening. I would entertain a motion to approve this non-consensus item as recommended or amended.
I so move.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Now is the time for discussion or comments on this item. This is something, as I mentioned the first time we took it up, that this district has never done before. What this pertains to is educators that are leaving their contract without good cause. And so we have to discuss what constitutes good cause. When we go in closed session, we can't take a vote, we can't take a straw poll, but we can ask enough questions until we feel that we have enough information to come out and make an informed decision on the matter in front of us. As I've said before, one way or the other, we are sending a message to all educators who are thinking about not fulfilling their contract. And for myself personally, I would say, please fulfill your contract. At the end of your contract period, if you want to take different steps, please do so at that time. It is better for both you and your family. So, any other discussion points? Seeing none, I will now call for a vote. All in favor of this motion, please signify by raising your right hand. The motion passes unanimously, Holly. 3L. The board will consider approving the superintendent's recommendation to give notice to Yakira Dean that it is proposed her employment with the district under a probationary contract be terminated. It is further recommended that the president of the board notify the teacher of the proposed action to terminate her employment pursuant to 21.104 of the Texas Education Code. This item was in fact discussed in closed session pursuant to section 551.074. There are no speakers on this topic this evening. May I have a motion to approve this non-consensus item as recommended or amended?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Trustees give notice to Yakira Dean that it's proposed her employment with the district under probationary contract be terminated.
Motion has been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will now call for a vote. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous, Holly. We will now proceed with the discussion portion of the agenda. The administration will provide an update on establishing attendance boundaries for elementary 58 and middle school 20 and modifying multiple attendance boundaries. Before that presentation, we will have 46 speakers. As I call your name, please come to the podium When the yellow light comes off, you have 30 seconds to wrap up. If the red light comes on, I'll give you time to make a sentence to wrap up. If you continue talking after that time period, I will then interrupt you and ask you to finalize your comments. I would ask that when you make your presentation and say what you have to say, please refrain from making denigrating comments about any of our campuses. I happen to believe that all of our campuses are excellent. They're all very solid. They all have different opportunities. Student attainment, as we all know, is generally dictated by the amount of money parents make at home, which is completely independent of the job that teachers do at that particular school, and is completely independent of the potential attainment of the child themselves, irrespective of whatever zip code they happen to come from. So I ask you to please remember that. You have 1 minute and the reason why we're only at 1 minute is once we go over 15 speakers, then everybody has 1 minute. So, Mr. Secretary, are you ready? Ready. Okay. Our first speaker tonight is Jennifer Lee.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Jennifer Lee, and I have 2 students at Rennell in 1st and 3rd grades. I have lived in Town Lake for over 10 years, and I also serve on the PTO board as Vice President of Major Fundraising. As a school counselor and mental health advocate, I know the emotional damage that accompanies inconsistency and change. Many of you have expressed concerns for uprooting our students, regardless of where they live in the district, which proves that mental health is a priority to Cy-Fair ISD. I understand how devastating change can be for kids because my daughter is on the autism spectrum. We have spent many years establishing relationships with staff members who allow her to be her whole self. I am only one of hundreds, but I'm here advocating for limited change, not only for our special needs population, but for all students who will be affected by this proposal. As parents, we have anxiously awaited the board's decision. I implore you not to prolong this process and vote yes on the 12-8 proposal in January to provide our students with the stability they deserve. Thank you for your time and service to our community.
Our next speaker is Vansanta Potru. And please correct my mispronunciation of your name before Mr. Secretary starts the timing. And I'll remind the audience, when I call your name, even if you just step out of the hall for a bit, if I call your name, you're not here, you lose your opportunity to speak. I'm sorry about that. Our next speaker is Nageesh Mishra. Our next speaker is Brahma Makala.
Good evening. My name is Brahma Mekla. I'm resident of Bridge Creek. And I would like to thank you, the board and the zoning committee, for accepting and listening to and addressing our concerns. We do understand the district has a challenging task of balancing the parent concerns and student interest and district needs. We also understand that we would walk away from here without all our concerns fully resolved. We are thankful and encouraged by the recent new recommendation from the zoning committee presented on Thursday board session. We feel that the district has addressed our primary concern and that our children continue to Cy Ranch High School from Smith Middle School. This update helps protect our children's emotional health and and reduce the social anxiety that may exist from the continuing to the high school from their friends from the middle school. We encourage the board to vote yes to the new proposed
Please
boundary
wrap
changes. Thank you.
Before I call the next speaker, 1 minute goes by very quickly. And I'm sorry about that, but we do have a large number of speakers. Our next speaker is Adam Lampy.
Thank you. There's a lot of familiar faces up here, and quite frankly, I spent a lot of time coming up here with my mother, who spoke a lot to the board. Growing up, we had year-round school, and it got my attention because my brother and I were on different schedules. And today, I'm coming to speak to you because there's a potential that my two young elementary kids could be on different schedules. And quite frankly, that's causing PSD for me. I would like my kids to be together, and I think that's really important for our children to be together. I've been in Town Lake for 10 years. My first home in Town Lake was right across the street, and I've since sold that. I moved 0.9 miles away, and that house that I was initially in is not even zoned to the school. So I ask you today, please seriously take the proposal done by the committee and by others seriously, and please vote. I want to keep my family together. There's studies out there from the Boys and Girls Club that say the number 2 stressor for children is moving schools. We have to do a better job. All the schools are great. They really are. And I want y'all to know that.
Please wrap up.
I appreciate y'all's time today. Thank you.
Now, the next speaker, I mispronounced your last name, so hopefully tonight I'll have it correct. Shannon Viola.
I'm here tonight in opposition of all of the proposed changes for Stonegate, particularly for my post-Mo Puma. He is currently at the 4th farthest school district from our home, and the proposal sends him to the 5th farthest school district from our home. So I have heard a lot of parents emphasize that they want schools closer to home and their communities to stay intact. I hope the proposal that we see and hear about this evening reflects some of that community feedback. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Baba Maskar.
Hello. Yeah, it's Vaibhav Maskar. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so good evening. My name is Vaibhav Maskar. I am a resident and representative of Bridge Creek community. Our children have experienced an abnormal amount of change, uncertainty, and stress in the last 2 years. The pandemic shutdown is all too recent for anyone to forget, and our schools and extracurriculars are finally setting back to the pre-pandemic normal. To add to that, however, with the young age of our neighborhood, all of our families have moved in the last 2 years as well. Our children have been uprooted from their previous schools, friends, neighborhoods, with the understanding that this move would be a positive one, although creating another level of anxiety in starting over. Our children should not be subjected to this same level of social anxiety again when they move to middle school and again for the high school. So we ask that our children stay within the feeder school so that they do not have to leave their friends behind yet again. So we encourage the board to say yes to keep our children in feeder schools from Smith Middle School to Seaway Ranch High School. Thank you for your time, all board members and also the zoning committee.
Our next speaker is Renee Russellhead.
Hi, thank you. I am from the community of Town Lake, and I call myself a founding member of Town Lake as I've lived there almost 10 years as well. I have 4 children, 3 of which, are currently in Rennell. As the boundaries go, 2 of my littlest will go to Potsma, and 2 of my older ones, if you allow them to be grandfathered in, will continue to go. So I will be in the same situation as Adam, where half of my children will go to one elementary and half will go to another, only to be reunited later on in junior high. But I just want to say I'm here to say all the same sentiments as all of our people are. We want to keep our community together. I know you guys feel like you're in a no-win situation with this, but I feel like some of the work that our community people have put together have come and put other boundary possibilities in front of you, and we just want you to consider those. I really, really hope that what you guys consider, or what we call the community map, and you guys call the December 8 map, that you will pass. We believe that just like you, that keeping code 274A, where I live, and B together in Rennell, and code 91670A and B together at Postma will assist in the
Please
capacity
finalize.
issues.
Our next speaker is Erin Robin.
Good evening. My name is Erin Rabin, and I'm a parent from Town Lake, Section 274A, part of Phase 2. I'm back tonight to ask you to vote for the alternative 12-8 zoning map presented at last week's work session. As Mr. Roberson shared last week, many of the facts presented in the original proposal may not be accurate. And Mr. Lampy and Ms. Lee both cited studies that changing schools is a significant stressor for school-age children. We must question these assumptions that may disrupt educations and communities, cause incremental stress on students, and still not achieve the district's desired outcome. Town Lake Section 274A proposed to move to Rennell from Postma, or from Rennell to Postma, all come from a mature neighborhood where the majority of families have lived in our homes for 5 to 10 plus years and won't be adding additional children. Are you as board members comfortable voting yes to a proposal that disrupts students' lives, separates communities, and may not even solve the problem at hand? Rather, I implore you to reconsider and instead vote to approve the 12-8 map. It is well-researched, aligned with educators, rezones established communities together, and achieves the district's goal while also minimizing disruptions to students during formative education years. Finally, I just want to thank you all for all you do, your willingness to partner with us, and your commitment to success.
Our next speaker is Stephen Walker. Stephen Walker. Our next speaker is Naomi Walker. Naomi Walker. Our next speaker is Jacob Cantrell.
Thank you. I'm speaking tonight in opposition of rezoning the Hidden Arbor community from Keith to AROB. Just wanted to give you a little bit of impact analysis here. Our kids currently spend about 30 minutes a day in transit on bus. This proposal will take that from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. That may not sound like a lot, but that's an hour a day for 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. Over K through 5, that comes out to 432 hours or 18 days missing from home for no added benefit or educational benefit. It's an extra 5,000 miles of transit, which increases the likelihood of incident and increases unneeded or causes unneeded risk for our children. I strongly encourage you to reconsider rezoning our community. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tanya Collier.
Thank you. Ready? Town Lake is a tight-knit community. From my own experience, I've watched our kids interact with other kids across Town Lake through swim team, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, cheer squads, flag football teams, and during other Town Lake-sponsored HOA events. And while all that it's great, let's not kid ourselves that the linchpin in all of those relationships are the ones that our kids made at our beloved Rennell Elementary School. While our kids may see each other on a yearly HOA Easter event, it's the bonding time at lunch and the mate on the playground that forms these deep relationships. These young bonds are special. I sincerely ask you to adopt the December 8th map supplied, and please keep the Town Lake neighborhood the united community it is today. Thank you.
I would point out that if you are here to speak for somebody other than whose name is on the list, you are not supposed to speak. So, Mr. Collier, I presume your first name is Tanya, but for anybody else in the room, if you know somebody is not speaking and you want to speak on their behalf, you cannot. That's unfortunate, but it's just the way the rules have been set up. Our next speaker is Joseph Green.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Green. I'm a resident and representative of Bridge Creek. As a previous neighbor discussed, our children have been through a lot of change in the last 2 years, some moving from other side fair ISD schools, others from out of state and out of country, and have no familiar places or faces around them. We are aware that the district needs to help populate underutilized schools, relieve over-enrollment at other schools, as well as create new attendance boundaries for future campuses. We are also aware that a change is upcoming for our elementary school students outside of the boundaries discussion for upcoming school year, which is understandably unavoidable. We ask that the school board please allow for a level of stability and familiarity to our students at middle and high school levels, and request that the board vote yes to the proposal of Smith Middle School and Sire Ranch Schools for Bridge Creek, and allow these children to remain at these schools for a foreseeable future to provide continuity to our new and growing community. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Our next speaker is Chaitanya Vardhan.
Good evening. My name is Chaitanya Kandula, and I am a resident and representative of Bridge Creek. We ask the board will vote yes for Bridge Creek to attend Smith Middle School and Cy Ranch High School, but we would also like to address elementary schools as well. We understand a change is upcoming for elementary school students for the 24-25 school year. It was recommended that the Bridge Creek be zoned to elementary 59. However, it was noted that the elementary school will be quickly over capacity by year 2 and will need relief. In looking at other elementary schools in the vicinity, it appears that Warner Elementary has a decreasing projected enrollment and was shown in the previous presentation to be down to 92% utilization within 10 years. As the distance to both schools is comparable, and Bridge Creek is the lowest populated residential code proposed for elementary 59. We ask that the district consider Warner Elementary as well. This option will prevent rezoning our students again in the future if 59 grows as expected, and keeps the children in line with feeder schools to Smith Middle School and Cy Ranch High School. Thank you.
Stop. Our next speaker is Humana Ali.
Good evening. My name is Jamana Ali. My kids go to Rennell Elementary, and my family is actually not affected by any of the proposed boundary changes. However, I'm still here in support of the 12-8 proposal, which prevents the splitting of our community at Rennell. The families affected are founders who are a vital piece of building the strong community that we love today, and they have my full support. I would like to vote on the 12-8 proposal in January to avoid a delay. On a personal note, I know several members affected by the boundary change who are on our school's parent-teacher organization, which I also serve on the board for. I can't imagine Rennell without them. They have given countless hours towards our school as leaders and volunteers towards a community they considered their family. I want to do my part to prevent splitting up the Town Lake Rennell community. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Janet McCoy.
Hi, good evening. My name is Janet McCoy. I live in the Stonegate community. We have lived there since 2003. We're homeowners. I have a concern with the changes that are being placed with the high school of going to go from Cy Ranch to Cy Falls. I have a son who is a sophomore in Cy Ranch right now. I have a daughter who's coming from 8th grade, is going to go to Cy Falls. We have two different schools that they're going to be going to, which is a hardship for our family. I think that you need to have consistency in our children's education, and if these things happen, it impacts these students, and they struggle emotionally and socially and academically, making friends harder to make friends and build stable relationship and have success. I wish you would please listen and take in consideration of keeping our children together. I know you'll have a lot of hard decisions, but not to split families. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nicole Miller. Nicole Miller. Our next speaker is Christy Holicek. Christy Holicek. Our next speaker is Dustin Smith. Our next speaker is Normal Paldel.
Good evening. My name is Nirmal Paudel, a father of first grade and sixth grade, a resident of Bridge Creek. We greatly appreciate the district consideration for those students already attending a Cypher campus in the midst of all the rezoning proposal. Thank you for your stance in allowing our current high schoolers and their incoming siblings, 8th grader and 5th grader, to remain at their current school to help ease any transition. Our community would like to support Ms. Hanneman's suggestions and request that siblings of those 5th and 8th grader be allowed to remain and fulfill their time at those respective schools as well. This allows our last year students to complete their time at their current school without having to separate them from their younger siblings. This helps to relieve the stress of transportation and consider the well-being of the siblings. We encourage the board to vote yes for Smith Middle School and Cy Ranch High School for Bridge Creek while allowing those last year students to complete their time at their current school. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Karan Kantiti.
Good evening. This is Kiran Kanteti. I'm a resident and the representative of Bridge Creek. During last week board meeting, we listened to the district desire for the state not funding to be diverted to private chartered schools or homeschooling. The board spoke on how to make use of Cypher ISD more desirable to the families who are choosing to exit the district for the alternative educations. For our Bridge Creek neighborhood, this has been a larger topic of discussion since the announcement of the rezoning proposal last month. A lack of stability has caused a desire to pursue educational opportunities outside of the district where our children don't have to wonder which school the next year they would be separated with the private schools coming in. We ask the board say vote yes to the middle school, Smith Middle and Cy Ranch High School for Bridge Creek to keep our children together and to stay with their current classmates and add stability to their education and ease our desire to move our children from a great school alternative educational opportunities that would provide that stability. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Stacy DeMeyer.
Before I begin, just want to make sure y'all received my handout that Holly distributed to y'all. Looks like this and has screenshots of Google Maps. I would like to thank Christy and her team for clearly working tirelessly on these rezoning proposals. Y'all do not have an easy job at all. I'm a resident of Hidden Arbor, and we are being rezoned from Keith Elementary to A-Rob. I love Keith, but I have also heard wonderful things about A-Rob, and I can say with confidence that I would be happy at any school my children attend in CFISD. Every school in CFISD is great. My concern with this change is that our students' commute time and distance will be doubling. I've distributed screenshots from Google Maps showing the time travel and distances from my home to both Keith and A-Rob so y'all can see for yourself. One potential alternative is to keep Keith as is, and instead of moving Res Code 120 from Alt to Keith, which is the only reason why we are being moved out, move those students to Swanky. Swanky has the same travel time and distance as Alt for that Res Code, is also a feeder to that Res Code's middle school, which is a feeder to that Res Code's high school, and Swanky will also have a very low utilization rate in the future. A pretty map must not come at the expense of a long commute for one group of elementary school students.
Our next speaker is Suzanne Chapman.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am here to ask you to not move our kids that are in Stonegate away from Cy Ranch. We're a strong-knit community, and often when boundaries change, our kids kind of get the brunt of that, and they change around from different high schools at least 3 times in the last 9 years. Our kids are flourishing at Cy Ranch, and they should have the opportunity to stay together and not wonder what the next year might bring for them if they or a couple of kids down the street are going to go to a different high school than them. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Melanie Handley. Our next speaker is Jacob Anderson.
Thank you for the chance to speak tonight. As stated in the prayer, I hope we can all ensure that first and foremost we are considering the needs of the children whom these changes will affect. To state my concerns, first, these proposals continue to create divisiveness and hostility in the community, and each draft seems to worsen that. My ask is that at a minimum that we can avoid Stonegate moving away from Ranch. The residents of Stonegate who are brought into the latest revision of Ranch to Falls obviously do not have to be included. We are not included in the first draft of that boundary proposal. Second, many of us moved into the homes we did specifically because of the schools involved. We're all passionate about Ranch, and my kids have been told by school staff all along that is where they're going to go. We've been selecting classes and programs for this next fall when my son will start there, based on what Ranch has to offer. And as stated by a member of the board at the previous meeting, not all campuses offer all the programs, and that includes the ones that are being affected right now. And third, my oldest son was maliciously bullied and persecuted by kids while in his elementary school who are in the current Cy Falls boundary. He only started to truly thrive at school when he started back at Spillane and was able to get away from the kids, and the boundary change will put him right back in harm's way. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Aaron Bork.
Good evening. My name is Erin Bjork, and I'm a resident and representative of Bridge Creek. For many of our neighbors, this is their first year within Cy-Fair ISD, and the stress of rezoning for our children has been anything but a pleasant welcome. We feel that a vote for Smith Middle School and Cy Ranch High School would provide the highest probability that the Bridge Creek community will be able to remain at the same schools and avoid a significant rezoning change in the future. A move to zone Bridge Creek further south limits the enrollment space for larger growing communities like Marvita and inhibits the relief for overcrowded campuses nearby. The northwestern side of the district should eventually find relief with the new schools on the land already purchased by Cy-Fair ISD. We would also like to recommend that in the future, the zoning committee request representatives from each residential code affected by a proposed change before officially announcing new proposals to gain community insight. This would help prevent undue stress and panic caused by oversight to communities like Bridge Creek when we heard our students would be removed from all feeder patterns as initially proposed. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Ashley Bailey.
Hello, my name is Ashley Bailey, and I'm a parent of a current Keith student as well as two younger ones who haven't started school yet. I'm here to provide feedback on the rezoning suggestion for my neighborhood Hidden Arbor from Keith to A-Rob. First and foremost, I want to recognize that I know that a lot of time, effort, and thought goes into all these decisions to ensure what's best for all of our kids happens, and thank you for that. But I also recognize that you guys are doing it for the district as a whole, and you may not know the nuances of each neighborhood. So I'm asking today that Hidden Arbor not be moved from Keith. This is not what's best for the kids in the neighborhood, because if they move from Keith, the distance doubles and the travel time doubles from 7 to 15 minutes at minimum and not at peak travel times. While this is expected for older kids like middle school and high school students, it's a lot to ask for younger children, 4, 5, 6-year-olds like my 5-year-old who's there. Also, this moves a wash because it's to provide relief for Alt. And so my alternative suggestion is to move Fair Meadows, which is Res Code 120, from Alt to Swanky from Keith, because then it'll still
Please
be,
wrap up.
okay, thank you, from low impact in the same feeder school. Thank you.
Our next speaker is William Odom. Our next speaker is Megan Tate.
Hello, I am speaking on behalf of Hidden Arbor, and my primary concern is the bus. My children both ride the bus. I've got 2 older ones that go to Keith, and I have 2 younger ones that don't yet. And I'm concerned at how much time they're going to be spending on the bus. Right now, My older kids spend anywhere from 20 to 35 minutes on the bus going to Keith. So with the additional distance, I'm worried that the bus ride is just going to get out of control. So.
Our next speaker is Patrick Halbig.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Halbig, and I'm a resident and representative of Bridge Creek. While we understand that there are multiple factors that require consideration during rezoning, it appears that some factors have been prioritized over other seemingly more equitable factors. There are discrepancies where, for example, in one zoning instance, the district is willing to split a smaller neighborhood, but in another notable situation, unwilling to split a much larger community. To drill down a bit, factors such as geographical proximity, enrollment projection, and school capacity appear to be way lower than the supposed need for keeping this larger master plan community together at the same schools. This in turn creates a situation where a public ISD campus is made available for the exclusive use of said master plan community. We ask that moving forward, the district consider the needs of all students and all neighborhoods within the district over the desires of a single community. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ibeni Inyang.
Good evening. My name is Ibiene Iyang, and I'm a resident and representative of Bridge Creek. The community of Bridge Creek would like to once again thank each and every member of the school board and attendant zoning committees for listening to our community's concerns. We're an incredibly diverse and passionate community united in our goal to provide the best educational pathways for success to our children. We share a common bond in choosing this district specifically to best care for our children's education. Cyfair ISD is an amazing school district thanks to your continued efforts. Just to recap our community's request, we would like to see a vote for yes to zone Bridge Creek students to Smith Middle School and Cy Ranch High School. Ensuring our students are aligned with feeder schools provides stability by keeping our children zoned to these schools for an extended period of time, allow younger siblings of incoming 5th and 8th grade students to stay at their currently zoned schools with their older siblings, and provide further continuity by considering zoning our children to Warner Elementary as an option versus Elementary 59. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Maria Pate.
I do not agree with the proposed rezone of Hidden Arbor from Keith to A. Robeson because of the distance. Comparing proximity to Hidden Arbor, 1.7 miles versus 5 miles, A. Robeson is more than double the mileage and double the drive time. A. Rob is in a high-traffic commercial area with multiple stoplights. It is reasonable to expect pick-up and drop-off for car riders could take an hour in the morning and again in the afternoon. Our lives are connected to the Fairfield community. My son is thriving at Keith. We have established relationships through school, sports, community, and faith-based activities, all fostered in Fairfield because of the proximity to Hidden Arbor. A board priority objective is to maximize underutilized campuses. With A-Rob at 80%, zoning more of the villages of Cypress Lakes there would have a greater impact and closer proximity than Hidden Arbor. This alternative would also provide relief to Keith. Hidden Arbor is a small, only 45 students enrolled, no community growth plans, and students aging out of Keith quickly. Thank you for your consideration.
Our next speaker is Astrid Azbatita.
I'm here to oppose to the December 8th mapping for Stonegate, Houston National. My daughter is part of the Spillane Choir, and the last week, with hopes to be part of Mustang and be part of the Cy Ranch Choir. I understand, as my neighbors have mentioned, that our zone has been moved different times, and this has affected our kids more than one time. What I don't understand, as the trustees say, we bought a house trying to go to Cy Ranch, but why are we being pushed away to exits from the freeway when there's way more communities closer to the Cy Falls than the Stonegate community? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jenna Bradburn.
Hello.
I'm Jenna Bradburn, a current resident of Hidden Arbor and the parent of a Keith Cougar. My husband and I both work full-time, and we rely on the bus to take our daughter to school. The distance from our neighborhood to our current elementary school is 2.2 miles. The distance from our neighborhood to the proposed rezoned elementary school is 5 miles. There are 4 elementary schools that are closer than A-Rob to our neighborhood. Keith, Swinky, and Farney are all closer distances. As a bus rider family, my child does not get off the bus until 4:40 p.m. every day, 30 minutes after school dismissal, and our neighborhood's only 5 minutes from Keith. My friend Kelly Force lives in Villages of Cypress Lakes, and her children attend A-Rob. Her home is 3.1 miles from A-Rob, and her children ride the bus every day. They don't get off till 4:45. Our neighborhood is 2 miles further. So what does that mean for us? 5 p.m., 5:30? It's gonna be dark outside this time of the year before our kids get off the bus.
Our next speaker is Manish Mittal. Our next speaker is Calvin Salimi.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a resident and representative of the Bridge Creek community. Our community representatives tonight have left you with a copy of the talking points presented by our neighbors this evening. Please feel free to reference them if any of the talking points were not presented clearly due to the limited speaking availability on this very, very important matter. We encourage you to vote yes on Bridge Creek, the Smith Middle School, and Cy Ranch High School. And again, we thank you for your time. As you have mentioned, you all volunteers, and your passion does not go unnoticed, and we thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Brian O'Rear. Yes, please.
I'm here to talk about the sibling rule, a slight change to the sibling rule for high school. And we currently have 2 children at Cy Ranch, Scott and Luke. Scott's 12th, Luke's 9th grade, one at Spillane Allison, 7th grade, one at Lambton, Andrew 4th. The proposed boundary transfer rules for high school would have our current 7th grader be able to attend Cy Ranch as a freshman because her older brother would be an 11th grader at the time. You know, I would like to see us apply the same rule for the 4th grader to also attend Cy Ranch as a sister would be in the 12th grade when he is a freshman. And there is no break in high school attendance. We would have a child at Cy Ranch from now until 2031. Doing this would keep all our children attending the same high school and keep our family together. I know there's several others in our same boat. Sending children to multiple high schools at the same time divides families, creates hardships. But the biggest reason is that it separates siblings from going to school together. You know, Luke and Scott have become best friends because they ride to school together and they're in the band together. This would not have been possible if they went to different high schools, and I want the same for all my children. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ivy Smith.
Thank you for allowing me to speak and for listening to our concerns. The primary community a child belongs to outside of their family is their school community. Under the best circumstances, the school community positively contributes to a child's socialization, academic outcomes, skill development, and social mobility. Schools provide a platform for students and their families to build long-lasting relationships. They act as a stabilizing institute that provides supportive social networks for families. Stonegate, where we live, has been rezoned at least 3 times since 2008. Please consider Stonegate at Cy Ranch and do not rezone us. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sean Joyner.
Hello, everyone. I'm a resident of Stonegate, combat vet, and probably might have more of a change with this adjustment. I have 3 kids in that are going to Cy Ranch, hopefully, and I have 4 that are moving up from Lampkin to Spillane. So I know about the mental health and the anxiety and all that. I don't want my kids to go through that. That's the hardest thing for a parent to actually look at when the main thing that you swear to protect, that smile turns upside down. It's hard to see. So I'm against that, please.
Our next speaker is Kelly Murphy.
Okay, what I handed addresses the 8 points in your slide from the last meeting. Since I only have a minute, I'm going to address community, neighborhoods, as well as campus feeder system and location. So I live in the section that y'all forgot used to be zoned to fair. So we go Lampkin, Spillane, Ranch. We don't have a community within Stonegate because we're a very small group that goes to Lampkin. Our children get on a bus, 15 minutes is tough. Our kids are on a bus on 290 every single day, both ways. Fine, I love Lampkin, I love Mrs. Parker, love the teachers. Then they go to Spillane. Out of my daughter's class, she had 4 children from Stonegate go to Spillane. At lunch, she could sit with nobody she knew because everyone else was Burks and Robeson. When they finally got to get up from the lunch table and meet other people, she made a core group knowing she was going to Ranch. Her core group is half Woods, half Ranch. Out of that core group, not one lives in Stonegate. She will again be ripped from everybody and by herself in 9th grade. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Erica Blanco.
Good evening. I'm a mother of 3 girls. When my oldest was at Cy Ranch as a freshman, her only friend died tragically, and she was left without friends. Dinner conversations that year were nothing but tears and depression. I thought that it would never end. Teenage years are critical. 7 neighborhoods are being proposed to be moved from Bridgeland to Woods, a total of 130 students. I'm only requesting that you please consider my neighborhood. That's 1 out of the 7. My neighborhood is the Villages of Cypress Lakes West, residential code number 627. It's 81 students. It's about 2% of the Bridgeland High School, and this number is unpredictable because many of our homes are leased. I am a homeowner who has experienced already 3 rezonings, first Ranch, now Bridgeland, and now proposed Cy Woods, which is at 100% utilization. Emotional and mental health matters. As adults, it's even difficult for us to make friends. Today, we witnessed a childhood friend support a new principal. Support matters. These 81 students matter, but they are not the solution to relieve Bridgeland for the next 4 years. Instead, please reroute your efforts to consider unutilized schools such as Cy Springs, that is 84%, or at Cy Park, 92%. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Saranda Yaram. Our next speaker is Kenny Lee.
How y'all doing? Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm a resident and a proud parent of my 13-year-old who's going to be 8th grader. He's going to be 9th grader coming up for fall 2023. Suzanne's my neighbor. We live in a very nice corner. We all have an excellent neighborhood. But the problem is my son and her son will never going to see each other again next year if you guys start rezoning. We're in a little south area of the Stonegate area. I've been living there for 17 years. I don't know why it takes you guys change that zoning about 4 times since I lived there since 2006. It's unbelievable. How can get all the new residents coming to live in that area? So I propose you guys not to separate everything from Stonegate. They should keep one school or from elementary school, middle school, and high school all the way through. Not making like 3 high school, 4 elementary school, and 4 middle school. That's just ridiculous. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christina Woods.
At the board work session on Thursday, Mr. Scanlon advocated for rezoning students in an apartment complex as opposed to those in single-family homes in the Lakeshore community by making the argument that since kids from apartments don't have regular access to the same amenities like those in single-family homes do, they should be rezoned as a matter of course. Let's be clear that if students that live in apartments don't have access to fancy neighborhood amenities, that is a failure on the part of the way that we build communities. And it's also part of the way that we redline economically disadvantaged families and families of colors. It's certainly not something that should be furthered in the process of the district rezoning. And I appreciate hearing from Ms. Heineman and Ms. Giron that it indeed isn't so in Cy-Fair. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Isabel Brodsky.
Hello again. To the Boundary Committee, Board of Trustees, CFISD staff, principals of Rennell, Postma, and Andre, and last but not least, all the parents of these incredible students, you are my village, and I thank you. With all the responsibilities on your plate, not only with your careers, volunteering, and life outside of it all, you found time to speak with me or even meet me to see my vision and hear my ideas with the community map to meet the district goals and family needs in a beautiful compromising resulting in the December 8th map update. I am blessed today to have been given this opportunity and know that the decision to uproot my family to move to this incredible state was one of the best decisions I have ever made. Vote yes in keeping Town Lake 274A in Rennell. Vote yes to zoning 697A and B Canyon Lakes together to Postma. Ensure these communities stay together, and let's all do this happily. Thank you.
That concludes the number of speakers we have on item 4A. Teresa, I suspect we have an ongoing presentation this evening?
Another 100 slides. No, I'm just kidding. I do. I always like to make myself relax a little bit, and so I'm going to say this. I thought doing a master schedule for a high school for 3,700 students and greater than 40 teachers floating was hard, but this has definitely been challenging, and you can't make everybody happy. So welcome back. Tonight I'm going to make sure that the committee is clear on what proposals do not need any modifications, as well as go over the options that the board wanted us to investigate from last Thursday night. I'd also like to apologize in advance for breaking some of the PowerPoint rules on presenting. Once on certain slides, I've tried to go over or have all the information on one slide so you wouldn't have to switch back and forth. But I heard there's a little bit of leniency when you have the PowerPoint in front of you, so I'm going to go with that. Also, I'm available for tutoring after this meeting. I'll never know. Okay, there we go. Yes, this is one of them. This is all the data that we received from last Thursday night, and this will be posted on the website until about 9:30 this morning. It's hard to read, but I'm going to attempt to summarize the main points. We received 530 entries. 196 were duplicates, with 106 from the same IP address. 452 entries for high school boundary proposals alone, with 85% of them of the total feedback. 310 were regarding Cypress Ranch to Cypress Falls, new recommendation for the 12-8, with 293 out of 310 disagreeing with the new proposal, 106 from the same IP address. 96 entries regarding the Cypress Ranch to Langham Creek boundary proposal from the original 11-14 board meeting, with 89 disagreeing with the proposal and 7 agreeing with it. Those two alone made up 406 of the 452 proposals. Then 29 entries regarding Bridgeland to Cypress Woods, with 22 disagreeing with the proposal and 7 agreeing with the proposal. So again, the majority of our feedback, more than the majority, 85%, were regarding the high school boundary proposals. As far as middle school goes, 36 entries, 7% of the total feedback. 20 disagree with the Aragon to Libi, And if we consider the 12-8 option for the high school, we would not propose this boundary option, which would at least please 20 of these people. 16 entries regarding middle school, 20 with the majority, 10 agreeing with the proposal. 42 elementary school entries, 8% of the feedback. We have 28 different proposals for elementary schools. The most we had on any one of these proposals regarding these boundary I put window was 7. And with that, I would like to start with elementary first. Okay. During the work session, it is my understanding that there were no recommended modifications to these 6 elementary proposal packages. Populate Elementary number 58 proposal, Metcalf Elementary Utilization Proposal, Bain Elementary Utilization Proposal, Hancock Relief Proposal, Alt Relief Proposal, Walker Elementary Relief Proposal. Is this correct? The board. I'm asking if there's any, I was my understanding there's no modifications needed on those proposals. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Notice we have totally removed populating elementary 59 as a proposal, and as a recommendation made by Mrs. Heineman at the board work session last Thursday. We will discuss those options this time next year. Also not included is the Rennell relief proposal, which I'm going to talk about next. Oh, whoops, okay. I wanted to give a little bit of history of how this new 91, old 91, and what it looks like. So during the work session, there was a lot of discussion about the Rennell-Copeland relief proposal. As a result of that discussion, I'm going to first focus on the current elementary zones for Rennell, Postman, Copeland. That is, at the beginning, last spring, before we even discussed any boundary change, this is what they look like. And yes, this map is from the spring prior to naming Elementary 57, known now as McGowan Elementary. So I apologize, but I wanted to show that it was until May, I believe, that it was named and the maps were changed. So I want you to notice the Rennell attendant zone, the khaki color to the right of Warner. Do you see that the tiny section off area on the right-hand side, that is or was the Res Code 91, the Cantera Apartments. Approximately 116 elementary kids reside there today. And when we started with the plan to relieve Rennell, thinking all of 274A south of Tuckerton would be going to Postma eventually, that was our original plan, meaning when 59 opened in the 24-25 school year, we thought if we take a little part now, it would offer a temporary relief that Rennell needed. We started looking at the land around 91. So PASA calls these residential development overview maps. I call them a land usage map. The long skinny map on the left is Rennell's current attendance zone. If you look on the right, I've zoomed in on the south portion of the Rennell zone, the portion south of Tuckerton. On the right-hand side, you see Town Lake, you see Kroger, the Little Res Code 91, Lakeshore, a park, and then all of Lone Star College just north of the Berry Center. With all of that commercial area and the tiny section of Lakeshore, we widened that area to now what we call the new 91. It looks like a backwards L shape. We call it that section. By adding the small Lakeshore section, it was only approximately 16 more students to the commercial college property and the Cantera Apartments. So we thought 132 students today could be good for next year for Rennell. It was a start, basically, to help relieve Rennell. We met with both principals, and Postma and Rennell both wanted relief. But if we gave 132 students to Postma, Postma would need relief also. So we noticed that Copeland was underutilized, so we thought, let's give some of Postma to Copeland. That's how the Res Code 706 and 177 came about, and they're right next door to Copeland. And it better utilize Copeland. So, another PowerPoint fail here. So, if this side would be easier if I could walk around and point and write on an overhead, but in the meantime, so this is where we need some feedback. Okay, I know 59 is coming in the 24-25 school year, but I'm only going to talk about the 23-24 school year for now. There was a recommendation again by Ms. Heineman on Thursday to hold on 59 boundary line. And it's a brilliant idea considering the complications of the feedback. But keep in mind, it's coming, so we don't want to move kids twice. The map on the left is current Rennell, Postma, Copeland boundary lines. And yes, the 91's already been altered on this map because we've already actually changed that line. Okay? I don't have maps for each of these options below that we investigated, but I know if I put all of these maps out there, it's only going to confuse people, so I want to talk about that tonight. First, I do want to say thank you for asking us to research these options. We learn something every time that we look at another option. I'm not putting anyone on blast here. I wanted to tell you I really do appreciate all of the input. I feel some options are better, but again, in the end, what matters is what y'all feel. Okay, so here's the question I need y'all to think about. For the 23-24 school year, do we provide Rennell the relief it's requesting? And if we do, what is our best option? And what would that look like? With 59 in the back of our minds, just a little bit, knowing it's coming and we don't want to move somebody twice. Okay, so again, relieve Rennell and or Postma is the question. Option 1114, this was our option that I just shared, was the new 91 Cantera Apartments in Lakeshore to Postma and Res Code 706 Canyon Lakes at Stonegate South and 177 Westlake Apartments to Copeland. Can everyone see the Res Code 91, the backwards L? Probably pros at this by now. And then this is the history I described to you on the previous slide. If we relieve Rennell by giving to Postma, we have to relieve Postma. Then the Postma to Copeland would have to occur. Any questions on this, Matt? Basically, all of 91 would be green, and 706 and 177 would be purple, which is the option that you've been familiar with since the beginning. Okay, then Mr. Scanlon, the old 91, the Cantera Apartments only to Postma, and 706 and 177 to Copeland. Asked us to take a look at just moving the apartments to Postma and keeping the Postma to Copeland the same. If you go back to slide 95, if I can. Oh. It is just taking 91 and giving it to Postma and still moving the 706 and the 177 to Copeland. It's a difference next year of 20 kids by leaving Lakeshore at Rennell. So you can, I don't have the charts again, but you can do the math by adding 20 back to Rennell and subtracting 20 from Postma. Okay. Next, Mr. Henry asked us to look at, again, the exact same option, but keeping 706 Canyon Lakes at Stonegate South with Postma. And without going into too many details, what that does is the apartments 177 only has 40 students in it. And so the Canyon Lakes is 135. And so it doesn't really relieve Postma. It changes the problem from Rennell to Postma with overcrowded of over 1,300 students. And then the last one, if again, minimizing student change, and if the idea was just to relieve Rennell, it was asking that we take the 91, which is the Cantera Apartments and Lakeshore, and just moving them straight to Copeland, adding around 135 students the next year, and not touching Postma at all. So that's the difference between those four different options. Again, I have numbers for all of these options, but I want you to remember is you can only look at the numbers for the 23-24 school year for the first year because 24-25, 59 will open, and all of those would then change because no matter what, Mira Mesa is where 59 is, and those would all be taken from Postma. And then we have some changes from Andre that we would want to promote or propose to Postma as well. Okay, so it's, again, do we relieve Rennell and do we relieve Postma? And if we do, how do we do it? That's kind of what you need to think about. I did have a map. Laura's awesome. She did give me a map for Mr. Henry's suggestion, just so you can see the numbers. If I did this for every one of them, I'm really afraid that people would be confused, and so I didn't do that. And again, if you look at the 24, 25 numbers on, not knowing what the 59 boundary change would be, those would not be accurate. Okay. Okay. I'm aware that this option includes the 59 option, but when I presented the 12-8 option last Thursday and the board requested a map of this proposal, I felt obligated to show this map to y'all. So this 12-8 option was created in response to the feedback we received to keep Town Lake together. So for the 23-24 school year, we proposed still moving the 91 to Postma and still 706 and 177 to Copeland. And then it shows what the 24-25 school year would look like when Mira Mesa and the parts of Andre were added to Postma and taken away from Postma. So it just shows the option with the 91 in Postma and the 706 and 177 gone to Copeland. But again, you asked for the map, so I wanted to make sure that I showed that to you tonight. And these are the numbers with those proposed 12-8 changes, and I showed this, you saw the same slide on Thursday, and it does include the 59 option because it went with a map. Okay. Also, I did talk to Dr. Smith, but again, so the question is, do we provide relief to Ronell and Postman? That's where I kind of would like some feedback as far as that is concerned. Anybody?
President Jackson, are we fine to have open comments now?
Are you ready, Christy?
Oh, yes, sir.
Absolutely.
So, Christy, looking at the numbers that you provided regarding the last option that I thought we agreed to on option 12.8.22, where all of 91 goes to Postma, et cetera, this is the map that you provided. I think that's probably at least a consensus that I understand that's the direction that we're headed.
Okay, so everyone is liking the relieving Postma and also relieving Ronell at the same time?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my understanding.
Okay, so it's originally a 11-14 option when it comes to the 23-24 school year. So the only difference is changing the opening of 59, which is in the 12-8 option. Does that make sense?
Can you go through that last point regarding,
Yes.
one more time, please?
So on 11-14, we had a proposal for 23-24 school year to relieve Ronell and relieve Postma. And that was exactly 91 to Postma and then Res Code 177 and 706 to Copeland. Okay, so that was that year. And then the next year, our original one was taking 274A down to Postma. Well, we modified the second part of it in opening 59 and changed it to the 12-8 option and said, instead, we'll keep Town Lake, it's 274A, 274B, and alter the Andre in the 59 school year for the 697A and B. We've moved them to Postma instead. Yes. Is that clear as mud?
Yeah, it's clear as mud. Thank you.
Okay. It's the picture of slide, let's see, 99 shows what the 23-24 would already look like, in addition to the new 59, which would be the 152A and B for Mira Mesa when opening elementary 59. It's where it says like future CFISD elementary, that's 152, 150 A and B. And then right below that was 697 A and B. Those two, currently Andre, moving them to Postma to really fill the hole that Mira Mesa is going to take when opening 59. And everything else was already in place for the 23-24 school year, which would be the 91 from Rennell to Postma. And then to the right of that, you don't see it, but it's the white section of 706 and 177 to Copeland from the year before.
Okay.
So,
I think that's my understanding.
okay, so is that everybody? Is that what we're moving forward for as far as the,
Question before we get off of elementary and move on. It's not mentioned up here, but we've heard from Hidden Arbor parents tonight. And I'm trying to remember, but if I recall correctly, wasn't Swinky slightly underutilized, like I want to say 86%? Is there a reason we're not moving those students instead of to Swinky instead of to A-Rob?
Hidden Arbor is on the Mushkey side of the road, and Swinky is down Shield.
Right.
And we have moved a small section, or proposing to move a small section from Alt to Swinky. And we have a small portion from Alt to Keith. And then as a result, we have Keith, because Keith is higher, to A-Rob. Because we're trying to be proactive in moving some kids from Alt, out of Alt, to prepare for the kids coming in Dunham Point. And we will have to make more shifts later,
I know
because
it,
that would
right.
mean also possibly breaking up, parts of
Fairfield.
Fairfield.
Right, yeah, I see that coming.
Yep.
Right, right. I was just trying to think of a way to keep those students from having a longer bus ride and remaining, I understand what
Right.
you're saying, Christy, but I'm just trying to.
I understand. Like, Kane is willing to talk about that, and if you want to do it now in the middle of Rennell, we could do it at the end, either way.
Can we do it now?
Sure.
I was going to ask them.
Okay.
Christy, do you need the map? Do you know what page?
I can, yeah, go ahead and talk about it, Kane, and I'll get the map number.
So you heard it is a little bit of a further distance, of course. So one of the things that we have to do whenever we go through a rezoning process like this is we have to reevaluate all of the bus routes and runs that are going to be affected by this. The way our tiered system works, we effectively have 30 minutes in between each school to pick up students, get them to school, same in the afternoon, pick up students, get them home. So we route our buses to effectively give 10 minutes load time at the campus and up to a 20-minute drive time out to the furthest stop. So our goal is to keep students on buses no longer than 30 minutes. So even with this change, it's going to be something that we'll reevaluate. And I believe there's about 68 kids that are going to be affected by this change with res code 72 and 700, I believe. So there's a good possibility that may be a bus that we'll add in itself right there for those two res codes that we'll pick up and bring directly to A-Rob.
How many seats on a bus?
It's a capacity of 77.
Okay, so what we would be aiming for is to try to get all Hidden Arbor students on one bus and not have the stops before we get to their subdivision.
That would be a goal of ours to look at, absolutely.
Right, okay. I understand the long bus rides because I've lived out here so long, my boys went to Lambkin, and I lived just down the street from Robinson, but there, we were all spread out then, so there were long bus rides. So
Right, yeah. And we
I
try to
understand
keep
the
students on the
concern,
bus as limited as possible. So
Right.
that's going to definitely be something that we'll reevaluate for every one of these changes as we move forward.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And remind me again, because I'm very familiar with that area, but offhand, I can't think of where Hidden Arbor is. If you're going down Mishke, are they on the right of Mishke or on the left?
No, the right side of Mishke.
If you look at page 53, 53 in what I presented Thursday.
Okay, got it.
You're right on, yeah. Right side of Mishke, sorry.
Okay, I see.
And it's 45 students. And
What's the res code?
What's 72?
72, okay. And what is 700?
It's Riverton Ranch.
Okay, and they're gonna go to A-Rob too?
Yes. It's 63 total students from those two sections.
And where will they feed to for middle school?
Goodson.
To Goodson.
That whole right side of Mesquite goes to Goodson.
Okay.
I still had a question for the bus czar
The bus,
behind you, yeah.
You have a new job title.
I'm gonna have to reorder business cards now, I like that.
It's refreshing to hear that the district and the transportation is always adapting. I believe Debbie brought up a good point in everyone's concerns, but solidifying maybe a bus for that area to keep them from going to other areas can diminish the time on the bus. When Christie is making all these suggestions, you are totally involved in all this as well with the bus routes and
Oh,
everything?
absolutely, yes, sir. We have, 4 people from the transportation department that participates in the boundary committees, so, yes, sir.
Right. And as far as everything that she's presenting, you have already seen in correlation to make sure that the kids are
Yes, sir.
there in the proper manly time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Nice to hear that. Thanks, Transportation Czar. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
okay, so it's my understanding that we are to continue looking at the 12-8 option moving forward for the 23-24 portion of the school year. Okay.
Can I seek clarification for myself on moving forward with elementary 59? Are we tabling a recommendation to bring to you in January? Or, I know Ms. Heineman brought that up, but I just want to make certain because that will make a difference in the maps and the information that we post on the website for continued input and feedback.
So I brought that up as something for the board to consider. I'm not advocating for it one way or the other. It's just something for us to think about. So as I said in my comment, I appreciate the being proactive and that we're looking ahead. So I see value in that, but I just wanted to put that out there as an option in order for the community to have some additional time to process the changes. I mean, regardless, Rennell will need relief.
Right.
Immediately
Absolutely.
and in the future. So it's just whether we address that now or not. So that's up to the board. I just wanted the board to consider it. I'm not
last
advocating
Thursday,
one way
I
or the
showed the map without the rest of the 59 because that was my starting point to show what 12-8 was going, not knowing maybe that you would recommend, but hoping somebody would, maybe to wait. But so if we would just make another 23-24 map that just included the Rennell, which we have it already, the Rennell and the Copeland and the Postma, those three relief.
I think there probably is value to hitting the pause button. I'd like to hear more about it, but for all kinds of reasons, given the current economic unrest as it impacts new housing being built, there's also some impact, as we know from the pandemic, on organic growth that is being played out. And of course, we have the history of side lakes of moving a little too quickly. So I like the pause idea, but by the same token, there are very healthy numbers here that have to be addressed. So ongoing information, and Teresa, I don't know if this puts too big of a workload on your department. I will say I'm in favor of pause, but I'm not ready to say I would vote for the pause button.
We can continue to leave this option posted and continue to get the input and feedback. Again, it's not a vote or a decision that has to be made tonight. So I just wanted to make certain I knew the direction you wanted us to go. So we can continue to have this option posted on the website to provide you with input and feedback.
That's good. And I think right now only 2 board members have spoken in favor of considering the pause button.
Okay.
But others may speak one way or the other on it going forth. It takes a while to digest the information.
It does. Moving on to middle schools. During the work session, it's my understanding these are the proposals where there were no recommendations for modifications. Populate Middle School number 20, option 1 proposal, Watkins to Thornton Middle School feeder alignment proposal, and Arnold Blisle Campbell Middle School feeder alignment proposal. The only proposal that's not on this list is the Aragon to Libi, and again, it was shared that the 12-8 option for the high school is preferred, and with that change, the Aragon to Libi would not be needed. Okay. With that, I'd like to review the 12-8 high school option that we received 452 entries out of 530. So I felt it was important for us to review this since it was a new option just introduced last Thursday. Again, the proposals that did not change, it's the northeast portion of Bridgeland to Cypress Woods, the 3 sections of Cypress Ranch to Langham Creek. All of these sections, by the way, already attend Aragon, and Aragon is a pure feeder to Langham. So keep that in mind when, I know they maybe don't all attend the same elementary school. I mean, right now, the Cy Ranch to Langham Creek, they go to Berks, Postma, and Woodard. But then they all go to Aragon. And right now, they currently all go to Ranch. And we're recommending that they all go to Langham. For the 3 elementary schools, we're not proposing any changes on those.
And so let me repeat what you just said. This would have Aragon being a pure feeder to Langham Creek. Did I hear you correct?
You did.
A comment I would make for the viewing audience, when I was a elementary school parent, that was what was most critical to me. But having been a high school parent, both athletics as well as in band, what clearly was most important at the high school level was as much of a pure feeder from a middle school to the high school level. I know when I have spoken to band and orchestra directors as well as athletic coaches, what they look for is that as pure of a feeder from middle school to high school, and even the time I spent as a scout leader, what seemed to be most important both for the boys as well as the girls was that middle school to high school. Mm-hmm. So I say that only because my views have changed from when I was an elementary school parent to being a high school parent. So thank you for pointing that out.
And when I say change, this is currently a pure feeder. Before with the Aragon Libi, the potential Langham to Falls is when we were going to be switching the Aragon to Libi to make still Aragon a pure feeder and then Libi a pure feeder to Falls. It's not necessary anymore for either one of these. It's a pure feeder, but I'll show you something in just a minute, how 2 more feeders are created to make 100%.
Okay.
So yes, it was already, and it still will be with this change, because they already all go to Aragon, and then they would all go to Langham, which is a pure feeder. The 12-8 modifications included 2 sections of the southeast section of Bridgeland to go to Cypress Ranch High School instead of Cypress Springs. The current feeders are Wells, Smith, and Bridgeland, and we're recommending it to be Wells, Smith, and Cy Ranch for the 23-24 school year for res codes 10 and 3232. The 2 sections of Cypress Ranch to Cypress Falls, which is the 373 and 2173. Questions were asked to share the feeder patterns of these. Currently, they go to Lampkin, 373 goes to Lampkin, Spillane, and Ranch, and 2173 goes to Burks, Spillane, and Ranch. And we are recommending that the high school part of the feeder change to Cypress Falls. And it's Mr. Reardon? How do you say your last name? O'Rear? Yes. O'Rear. He's been very nice. He's called the office, talking to him regarding his 7th grade, 4th grade, 9th grade, 7th grade, 4th grade, right? Yes. And I appreciate your homework because I was stumped and have been stumped on the res codes. But it was around, we found some data, where I didn't work in this department, about 20 years ago, that those res codes did attend falls in like 02, 03, 9th, and 10th grade.
You are correct, yes.
And I knew somebody that worked there, and I knew she was pretty close to some of the kids, and they lived in Stonegate. But in then around 2005, 2006, when we opened Woods, they went to Fair. And then after that, 2017, when we opened up Ranch, they, at Bridgeland, they went to Ranch. So they have moved, but there's been years in gaps in between. The last time they were moved was will be 6 years ago. So those are the two modifications to the 12.8 were from the original proposal. Okay. What I do want to show is this next. When people talk about feeders. All right. Okay. Before we talk about feeders, here are the numbers with high school 12.8 option. They are extremely balanced, proposed minimal changes. You heard from Sarah Hardy last week, who shared challenges when schools are either underutilized or overcrowded, needing relief. These are the numbers with those with the 12.8 option. Also, this is a map I really wanted the community to see. The colors are the current high school boundary lines, where the green lines represent the different middle schools within those high schools. So, for example, if you're looking at Cypress Park, it has Rowe and Thornton inside. So there are green portions of the Rowe and Thornton attendance boundaries within Cypress Park. So you can look and see, these are current though. These are current. You can see the different middle schools that share in all the high schools. The most we have at this time is Cypress Ranch has 3. 4. Wait, is this a 2223? Well, yes. Yes. When I look at it another way, and I'll show you in just a minute, when you go to a middle school to see where they go, the most is 2. So there can be a high school that will share 4, but a middle school only going to 2 different ones. So if you look at most frustrating part, okay. The current feeder patterns projections by res code, this also includes the percentages of those numbers. So looking at the Anthony line.
Could you try again?
Sorry. Look at the Anthony line. When you go across, it says 232 students go from Anthony to Cy Ranch, and 243 go from Anthony to Cy Springs. Okay. Going down the chart, you can see all present day projected numbers. These are projected numbers. Okay, the breakdown of the middle school students and where they go to high school. 9 of these middle schools are 100% feeders out of the 19 middle schools. This is current. The most any high school has, well, from middle schools going to 2 different high schools from a middle school. Okay. And then nobody else has this problem. Okay, if we use our proposed high school, middle school changes for 23-24, 9th only, there are 2 schools are added. 11 out of 20 are now pure feeders. Aragon would now be a pure feeder. It was still a pure feeder to Langham Creek, and with these changes, they would still be a pure feeder. And of course, middle school 20 would be a pure feeder to Bridgeland. Okay. 1 school this change would be 3 Spillane would feed into 3 different high schools. Spillane primarily feeds into Cypresswood with 53%, and the rest of Spillane, 25% goes to Ranch, and 23% go to the proposed Cypress Falls.
Christy, can I ask about that?
Sure.
And tell me if you think I'm looking at this wrong. What if those 127 that go to Spillane went to Libi? And then that way Spillane would only be split between 2 high schools, and Libi is a pure feeder to Cy Falls. Do you see what I'm saying?
We could definitely look at that option. If I'm jumping at saying, that sounds great right
I'm
here.
not trying to agree. Okay.
You're saying the 127 from Spillane.
I'm not advocating for this.
Right.
I'm looking at
Right,
if we
127.
want to
We could-
reduce
we
the
could definitely
number
look
of
at that option.
feeders. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm just asking the question. I'm not advocating for it, I promise. But if the intent is to reduce the number of high schools that a group of middle schoolers goes to keep those kids together, that is one way to do that, to reduce the splitting a group of middle schoolers between 3 high schools. And Libi is already a pure feeder to Cy Falls. It just jumped out at me when I looked at the numbers. Please don't send me hate mail. I'm just looking at.
Julie, you get to have your fair share of fan mail.
If you take these 2 charts, 106 and 107, and you compare them to the map in 105, it really makes, people don't think that there's that many schools that are within a boundary line, and there are.
And Christy, thank you for showing this feeder pattern. I had asked that, but I had also been contacted by any number of people who wanted us to have a little more attention paid to these feeders, so thank you.
Well, and I'm going to thank Laura for creating it. She does it for the current year, and then she jumps to the 23-24 and did the same thing. And so we have an elementary to high, but it's not as clean, and it's not as, it's messy. So, you see things like 8%. So it's not something that you always want to, it's more important middle school, when you look at middle school to high, bigger numbers. And as I showed you the high school colors with the middle school lines, I went ahead and showed this with the community because what I was just saying. It has the middle school colors with elementary lines. So you can see what elementary schools are feeding into the middle schools. And you can look at the chart as well and kind of see the areas that we're proposing and where they are aligned. You can see the outline in Goodson, in the north part of Goodson, on the right side of Mischke, the area that we are proposing. This is not a proposed map, but you can see that is the only part on the right side of Mischke that was going, not the only part, but a smaller part that was going to Keith. And we did look at those other sections, but there was almost 300 kids in the sections to the south where Cypress Lakes Golf Course and all of that is. That's just too many kids. And again, with greater than 4,500 pieces of feedback, I'm pretty sure y'all know how to share the input. But I went ahead and include it again in this presentation. Also, I wanted to share the recommendation from last week. And I think with a lot of the feedback that we received even today, that the 2 policies that we have for elementary and middle, it's a reg actually, I'm sorry. They say any elementary school student affected by this boundary change who will be in the 5th grade for the 23-24 school year may remain at their current elementary school on a student transfer if their parents provide transportation, so they're current 4th graders. This opportunity will not be available for younger siblings. The recommendation on December 8th, the work session, Board Member Julie Heineman made a formal request asking CFISD to modify the middle school and elementary school transfer provisions to include younger siblings. And as long as, my understanding, if the board and Dr. Henry recommend that, then the last sentence on each one of those proposed, or the policies or regs would be removed, and they would be allowed to continue to stay with their sibling. So if you had a fourth grader and they're going to be in fifth grade, they also had a second grader next year, that the second grader would be allowed to stay with the fifth grader on a sibling boundary transfer.
So basically, the entire family would continue on the same track at the same school, but they would have to provide transportation.
Yes. Yes.
There was a question raised by a citizen today about, I guess, how that looks going up into the high school
Right.
part.
And
So
that's
how
what
would that
I'm
look?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that in just a second. So for elementary and middle, it's kind of like the same high school policy, but applied to the elementary and middle school, okay? And then, just like Mr. Arrear has a situation where his child's in ninth grade. So that child is already going to attend the Cy Ranch. So seventh grader, moving forward, the other school student would be in 10th grade. So when he's in ninth grade, or is it 11th? 11th and 9th, sorry, math in my head, would be allowed. But by the time that then ninth grader is a 12th grader, the fourth grader would be a ninth grader. In the past, we haven't allowed that to happen because that's a sibling of a sibling, okay? So it would be a really probably nice recommendation if we continued that to where this sibling of a sibling labeled that way could remain with the other two students or follow in the path of the other two students.
That is a logical extension of Ms. Heinemann's recommendation. But I would point out any parent who followed that recommendation, they would be choosing keeping their children on the same school pattern, even though their friends would be going to a different school. Because we would not be making that exception for all their friends, but merely
Communities, right.
for that single household.
Very true. And bus transportation is only 3 years. So, for high school, only 3 years, right? So a current freshman will receive transportation, a current now freshman, if there's changed, if where they live is changed for the next year, incoming eighth grader and ninth grader have the same rule. They would have transportation for the next 3 years because that ninth grader would get that transportation for 10th, 11th, and 12th. They're current ninth graders. So an eighth grader's going would have transportation as long as there is space, but only for 3 years because the transportation is provided for the current ninth grader, this year's current ninth grader. And that's the way it's always been. So they would get it for 3, and after that, they would have to provide their own transportation.
Do we have any data to let us, how would that impact the relief for the numbers? How many families have such a spread or number of kids? Do we have any way to make sure that that's not changing the projected numbers in the schools by overcapacity or anything like that?
It definitely is a challenge when we're doing projections. We can look at potentially what the numbers for siblings would be, but we also require those sibling transfers applications to be returned prior to the end of the school year, so we would at least have an idea of who is interested. It's the same as every year, open, closed. And so we kind of wait and see. Does everybody understand what I meant by the ninth grade would get it for 3 years? I want to make sure, because
I do.
I know it's
The short answer is don't count on bus travel.
Yep.
right. As long as the bus is going through there for the current ninth grader, because that student gets to stay. If there's space, transportation allows it. But when the eighth grader's coming up and they're going to go to sibling transfer, they get to piggyback off of that. but not for all 4 years, only for the 3 years, because it's for the freshmen that are attending there now that do not have to move or change. There's just a lot of stuff.
It is. I do have an unpleasant question for you.
Yes, please.
So on option 12-8-2022, it looks like we are being asked to choose to keep Town Lake together and sacrifice Stonegate for doing so. Why is that not what we're doing here?
At the elementary level or at the high school level?
At any level?
Well, at the elementary level, when you have a campus that is underutilized like Copeland, and those two sections are right next to Copeland, and you have adjacent overcrowded campuses, it makes sense geographically, and it makes sense on projections, if you ask me. We did look at all of the other options.
So let me stop you right there. So what's the, and I live in that area and I travel that area. So what's the approximate distance of those sections to Copeland?
I would have to look that up. I don't have that information with me, I apologize.
Okay. Well, and I always ask unfair questions and
No,
and I
I'm not afraid of you
apologize
anymore, Mr.
for
Jackson.
that, but if you would look that up and send it to me,
Sure.
and also to the rest
I'll
of the
send to
board.
everybody.
Because this is really, I see this is the crux of the question at hand.
When you move 91, the bottom part of town, like the bottom right part to Postma, if you look then 706 and 177, if you move one and not the other, it looks like you're having a big chunk out of a section of Postma and just picking an apartment again from the Postma zone and only moving the apartment to Copeland versus that other section.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up. Very difficult for apartment parents to come to a zoning meeting and speak on behalf of apartments, and that's apartments throughout the entire school district. And that's really the responsibility of we trustees, because if they don't have the time to speak up for the apartments, then we have to speak for the apartments. And that's the reason why I always question and always have about moving apartments, and are we just moving apartments? You heard that question before. Established subdivisions, and I live in one. We tend to be very vocal, and we tend to be very passionate. Doesn't mean that those who live in apartments are not equally passionate, but they may not have the same amount of time that we have to display our concerns. So I'm always sensitive when we move any apartment, and I will always question, why are we doing it, right? We have to, particularly in the section that I asked about before. Natalie would call it El Rincon, or the corner, but that area is full of apartments. So you can't move students without moving apartments, but we still have to ask the question, even if we know that particular answer.
In growing areas, there are many families that live in apartments just temporarily, and lots of times they, while their house is being built, and if you have an apartment complex going to a different school in the neighborhood that's right there, while their house is being built, they'd like to start there at the apartments and then go to the school that they're attending. Lots of times, especially in those areas.
Well, you're right. The other aspect of what the Fed is doing that has an impact on our district is that as interest rates go up, single-family units go down and more apartments get built. So there's that shift that's possible as well. So I'll be quiet now and let you finish.
Questions? So it's my understanding the 12-8 elementary option and the 12-8 high school option are the ones that are preferred so far, and we'll also send the answers to your questions that you've asked regarding.
Please.
Okay. If you have any others, just send me an email. Any other questions?
Can you go through the numbers again on amount of feedback you've received regarding Cy Ranch and the proposed move to fall? What was the?
Yes.
Do you have information on feedback?
Mm-hmm. There were 96 entries regarding the Cypress Ranch to Langham Creek from the original 1114. That was just in the past, just from Thursday to now were 96 entries. 89 disagreeing and 7 agreeing. And then there were 310 regarding Cypress Ranch to Cypress Falls, the new recommendation regarding the 12-8 recommendation, with 293 disagreeing out of 310.
Okay.
106, I forgot, from the same person.
Out of that 293, 106 were from the same IP?
Mhm.
Okay.
And you'll give that to us in a new chart too, right?
Yeah, oh, yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, and we apologize for you not getting it. It was at 9:30 when we kind of collected it again. So I apologize, we'll send that to you.
I realize y'all work very late hours on this, and I appreciate that.
Of course.
Gilbert?
Yes, appreciate everything you and your staff are doing. When you answer something, someone's going to be upset no matter which way you go. So we kind of talked about that when your original presentation. About a year ago, there was a presentation of movement of families throughout the district area in anticipation of this. I'm not sure if y'all remember that. It was a great presentation in anticipation of this. Just for reassuring the community, just because a school does not have a lot of kids in it and they're understaffed does not mean that school is not a viable or as good as the other schools. During that presentation a year ago, we went through where certain areas of families of growth with younger children were all in school and they were fluxed. And then, example, Jersey Village a few years ago was not because the older parents, empty nesters, and the numbers were down. Back again, it's a movement. It doesn't not mean everything Jersey Village is full now, and this is what Langham Creek is going through now. Empty nesters here, they're still in the area, but these schools are passionate and they thrive within our district. But yes, there's concerns for everybody, and I just want to let you know you're doing a great job, and you have total support from everybody on this board. I can assure you that, though.
Thank you. Couldn't do without my staff behind me. My staff of one behind me.
Yeah, these are great right here.
Thank you.
So Teresa, since Christie's no longer at the podium, I suspect that means the presentation on boundaries and zoning is finished?
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Heineman?
just to confirm, we will have a work session in January, and then the actual vote is scheduled for the formal board meeting, correct? January 12th? Does that sound right? Okay. Are we Monday, Thursday?
I think so, yes.
Okay. So on the Thursday meeting. Okay, thank you.
And I would note that Mr. Sarabia requested us to consider, Teresa, that Mr. Sarabia requested us to consider having a second work session just on boundary alone and nothing else. So Mark, you and I can, in January, so Mark, you and I can chat about the feasibility of that?
That's tough. But yeah, it's important.
Shouldn't we,
I'm sorry, somebody had a comment?
shouldn't we poll the board to see if everyone feels that we need that second work session?
Well, absolutely, but one board member does not dictate the movement of the board. I was merely passing on.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Mr.
And
Jackson.
that is a question, Marnie, for you. Can we poll that through email as opposed to doing it in a public session?
Well, the board operating procedures dictate the president can actually call a special call board.
Yes, I can. Your mic may be off, although as an attorney, your voice is very commanding.
No, yes. Normally, I don't need to be amplified, but the board president can actually call a special called meeting at the request of the superintendent or at the request of another board member. And so, if you get consensus, I wouldn't say. I mean, you can poll because it's not you're not trying to circumvent the act. You're trying to figure out, do we want to have a meeting? So you can certainly get consensus from your team if you want to go ahead and call that special call board meeting.
Thank you. Just needed the clarification on how to proceed. We will now proceed with the citizen participation portion of the agenda. 5A, per BED local, patrons may address the board during the regular board meeting under citizen participation on any matters of interest or concerns that are not posted agenda items. Individuals may only register to speak one time per meeting and must register in advance. Just a reminder, patrons who have registered to speak this evening may see the order of names listed on the screens to your right and to your left. Before your name is called, please move forward and sit in one of the two reserved seats on the front row. Our first speaker this evening is Stacy DeMeyer. And before you start, Mr. Secretary, are you ready?
2 minutes. Yes.
Proceed when you're ready.
I'm concerned about members in our community being led by a trustee's spouse, organizing meetups to fill out forms for library book formal reconsiderations. Board policy states this is their right, but we all knew that this elaborate new book policy would not be enough for the crowd who have been fighting to ban books in our district. It isn't enough for them to be able to control their own child's access to library books. They want to control all of our children's access. I'm worried about this insane amount of work, extra work this will place on our librarians. Board policy states that once a book is reviewed through the formal reconsideration process at a campus, it shall not be reviewed again for 1 calendar year. Is this only true for that campus, or for the whole district, or for the district as a whole? Or can someone hop around from school to school requesting the book be reconsidered until they get their way? Can someone submit an unlimited number of reconsideration forms? How is the district protecting our librarians from these sort of practices? I also would like to request that the district makes the book reconsideration form submissions public. As a parent, I would like to know what books other parents are concerned about, and I think that this would help with accountability. I'd like to use the remainder of my time to respond to some of the rezoning responses we got on Hidden Arbor. First, Hidden Arbor already has their own school bus. These 2 zones already have their own school bus, so that's not going to change the school bus time. They already have their own school bus. There's no reason why Res Code 120 can't go to Swanky. Swanky is underutilized even after the 2 zones from Alt are moved to them, and it gets increasingly worse as time goes on. Swanky will have Res Code 120 will have a similar commute time that they currently have being zoned to Alt than they would going to Swanky. There's no reason why they can't go to Swanky other than the map not looking so pretty. Okay, that's all.
Our next speaker is Mark Golaby.
Good evening. How's everybody doing? Long meeting. Well, at any rate, so I wanted to take some time to recognize some efforts of two Cy-Fair students. Last month, I brought up the Gold Eagle Essay Contest put together by True Texas Project. And it was a spontaneous contest by True Texas Project, and the lead time was very short. Regardless, Cy-Fair school districts did have two entries. We had Mohan Maye Gokhale, as well as Arushi Nath, both from Cy Ranch High Schools. So they both submitted, and while neither one of these participants won, I do appreciate their response and getting their entries in. With 14 entries in total, Cy-Fair actually had 10% or over 10% of the entries in there, so that's always wonderful too. So True Texas Project did indicate to me that next year they would be holding the competition again, so hopefully we'll have more warning and get more participation across the district. And I also wanted to thank Teresa Hull and Marnie Sims. Obviously, from that time that it was put out, they got the word out somehow, at least to Cy Ranch, and so we did get those people to come in. So we do appreciate that, and just wanted to kind of give that feedback and let people know how that contest went and the response that we actually did get. So thank you all very much, and have a Merry Christmas.
Our next speaker is Garth Clark. Garth Clark. Before we adjourn, I would like to thank everyone for being here tonight, and I would also like to thank those who are watching from home. I will take a motion to adjourn for this evening.
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Oh, thank you.
Oh, darn.